welcome everyone for this exciting information webinar on dreams and tracking in the Kalahari. And I'm here with my friend Chris Casillas. Chris is going to be helping me and interviewing me, and he's also one of the last participants. He came a couple of years ago on the first retreat to the Dreams and Tracking Kalahari. And he's a wonderful person to have with me because of his experience in the Kalahari. So over to you, Chris. Say a few words.
Yes, welcome everyone. We're so happy that you're here with the little bit of time left of the old moon as we transition to the new moon here. And so what we'll do is John's going to do a bit of drumming and chanting for a couple minutes to set the space, and then we'll kick off with a more formal intro. So go ahead, John.
Thanks, Chris. So welcome everyone again. I'm so excited to see all of you, and I'm also so excited to see the interest for dreams and tracking the Kalahari. It's been a dream of mine to do these retreats with the focus of bringing modern people into Africa to teach them indigenous skills, to teach them the way of tracking, the way of animal communication, and also the way of connecting with your ancestors and connecting with your bones. So, without further ado, let me do a little bit of drumming and let's set the scene. So this drum is a drum that I dreamt about many years ago, and when I was in South Africa, and it started my journey in the sangoma world. And the whole retreat, there's going to be a lot of drumming and chanting and singing. So here we go. Sit back, relax, feel the spirit of Africa, and here we go. Unumanla, manla, unumanla, manla, hey, unumanla, hey, unumanla, manla, manla, hey, manla, manla, hey, manla, manla, hey, manla, manla. So I encourage you, wherever you are, to welcome in your ancestors right now, to welcome in your bone people, welcome in your humanity, welcome in your animal spirits. Tamagwini amanyonge, 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 So welcome everyone. We say which means welcome in the ancient ones. So on that note, I'm just going to bring my friend Chris in, and he's going to say a few words. And so over to you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thanks for the drumming and the chanting. It quickly takes me back to the Kalahari, where we spent that time. So yeah, our intentions for this here is to help to get the word out about this excellent opportunity to spend time with you, with the land, with Alwyn and the trackers there at the Kalahari coming up here relatively soon, beginning of next year. And so, yeah, we wanted to give you some more information about what this is all entailing, what the is involved in the trip, the history behind it, and why you might be interested in joining. So we'll do this interview style where we'll be asking John some questions, and he'll be sharing some of this key information with you to give you a sense of what it's about, what it's like, and we'll have some time for questions at the end too. So yeah, we're so glad you're here and that you're spending this time with us now. So John, this trip has been on your heart for some time, sometime even before the first trip happened. So maybe you can start by talking about what was the call that you were responding to that made this all possible.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Chris. So this all happened after my book Leopard Warrior was published. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, Craig Foster, in Cape Town, about my wish to bring people into Africa to teach them indigenous medicine. And Craig recommended going to the Kalahari and connecting with Alwyn, who's a well-known tracker in the Kalahari. And at that time, interesting enough, Craig was actually working on his own project in Cape Town. And for those of you who watch Netflix, Craig's documentary on My Octopus Teacher has become quite a hit. So Craig and I were working on the Kalahari and on the ideas around the Kalahari. So when I was speaking about going to bring people to Africa, he said the Kalahari was the place to go. So I contacted Arwen and we had a great chat together. And then Arwen had this remarkable experience with a wild leopard that he had befriended and worked with for a number of years. And Arwen is an animal communication specialist. And one day he contacted me on WhatsApp and he said he had had this profound experience with this leopard called Matsebe. And he said when he spoke to the leopard, he spoke to her about me, and she said to him, "You need to bring John Lockley to Botswana as soon as possible because I want to download information to John, and he needs to get you as soon as he can." So when he spoke to me, he said to me that this is the experience he had, and he said, "When can I get to Botswana?" Now, when you get to know Alwyn, or some of you get to know him, you'll see that he is the opposite of anything hippie. He's a very grounded person, and he's a very solid person. So when he said this to me, I was really, really surprised and really shocked, actually. So I said, well, the soonest I can get there is February, because I was on a book tour at the time. So anyway, I went to Botswana and met up with Alwyn, and we went into the bush and we tracked the leopard. And I didn't get to see Matsebe, but I got to meet her daughter, who was the next up-and-coming leader in that area with the leopard. And then a few months later, sadly, Matsebe died, and it was very tragic for Alwyn, and he was very upset. And actually, the name of his safari is called Matsebe Safari, to honor Matsebe. So true to what Matsebe said, that there was a download of information for me in terms of the bushveld and my experience in the bushveld, and my experience with Matsebe as well in the spirit realm. And then when we arrived, we had this idea about doing these retreats, Arwen and I, And I said to him, what are your thoughts about this retreat? And he said, well, let's do it. So I said, well, how about we call it Dreams and Tracking in the Kalahari? And he said, wonderful, let's do that. So we started straight away planning these retreats. And then the first retreat, the one that Chris came on, just before it started, we were setting up camp in the middle of nowhere in the Kalahari. And I said to Alwyn, have you had any dreams or experiences from Matsebe in the other world? And he said, no, not for a while. So I said, well, here is some sacred impepo from South Africa. I said, I want you to breathe it in and work with it, do some prayers, and let's see if you get any dreams. So he said, okay, I'll do that. And then the next morning, I sat down with him, we had a cup of coffee, and he had this big smile on his face, and he said to me, I saw Matsebe. I said, really? He said, yes, I had this profound dream about Matsebe. And I said, wonderful. And then he said to me, I dreamt that Matsebe was walking with other leopards very close to us here. And he said, after breakfast, I'm going to take you to that place that I dreamt about. So I said, okay, great, let's do that. So we finished the breakfast, and then he took me in the Jeep. We went driving towards that place that he dreamt about. And then after a while, he just looked at me, he smiled, and he pointed down at these tracks in the sand. And we stopped the Jeep, we got out, and he looked at the tracks in the sand, and he just went like this to me. And he said to me, these are the 2 leopard tracks that he dreamt about, the 2 young leopards. And in the dream, Matsebe was guiding these 2 young leopards. So he said, these are 2 leopard tracks, the exact leopards that he dreamt about. And he said, and then we were just quiet, and he just said, nothing else needs to be said. And I said, yes, that's right. Because there was a blessing from Matsebe that she was watching out over us. And when we are tracking the animal and we get to connect with the animal's tracks, we connect with the animal's spirit. And sometimes we don't necessarily have to see the animal in the flesh because we have connected to its spirit. So this is what he already did in the dream time. So before we started these last retreats this year in 2020, again, we went into the bushveld together to set up camp. And as we're driving into the bushveld, it was still the afternoon and the sun was still high. It was around 4 o'clock. And there was this female leopard that crossed the road. It was very mysterious. And Alwyn looked at me and he went like this. And he said, yes. He said, these retreats are being blessed again by Matsebe. It was a young female leopard. And it was very unusual to get that sighting in the middle of the day, crossing over the road. And also she waited and she looked at us. She waited. So that was also very unusual because leopards are very solitary and quite shy. So the focus of these retreats is to teach people indigenous skills to help them to connect with their indigenous spirit, and in particular modern people, because there's a crisis in the world today, and that crisis is that people are forgetting who they are, people are forgetting their connection to their own soul, to their own spirit, and people are forgetting their relationship to nature. So the focus of this is to help modern people, to upskill modern people with the skills that indigenous people have. So those skills are indigenous people from Southern Africa, in particular the Khoisan, the Bushman people, and my own people, the Sangoma people. So we are coming together in a very, very unusual, for a very unusual retreat. And for all of you listening, this is the only retreat of its kind happening in Africa today, where a tracker and a Sangoma team up to teach indigenous African technology, skills to help people connect to their own soul, to their own spirit, and to nature, because the two are connected. Once you make a decision to connect to your human spirit, your humanity, then the next decision is to connect to your bones and your ancestors. And then the third gateway is to connect to nature. So all those three gates happen at the same time. So making a decision to connect to your own spirit, your own soul, and then making a decision to connect to your ancestors, and then that opens up the third gate to connecting to the animal and plant spirits. So these are the teachings. This is what I'm going to be showing people. Now, please bear in mind, this is a 7-day process, and Alwyn and I have been doing this, each of us, for about 22 years. So we're bringing 44 years of experience together, and so I'm asking people not to have huge expectations about their practice, because once you set yourself up with huge expectations, you're putting yourself under pressure. What I'm asking for people to do is just to allow themselves to be open, to be innocent like a child, to watch the African sunset, to follow the tracks in the sand, to breathe in the sounds and smells of the Garden of Eden. So where we are taking you is the Kalahari, which is the birthplace of mankind. The earliest remains of human bones and artifacts have been found in the Kalahari Desert. And one of the oldest, or reputed to be the oldest living indigenous tribe in the world today, are the Bushman, the Khoisan. So I feel that the trip I'm leading, me and Alwyn, is the trip of innocence, the Garden of Eden, taking you to a place that is wild, that has been unsullied by the Western and modern world, and a place where you can reboot and reconnect to your humanity, to your innocence. So this whole practice is really a return to innocence. These animals behind us, the elephants, what do they have that we lack? Innocence. What does innocence offer us? The chance to hear the voice in the wind, the sound in the wind, a chance to hear your own spirit and the spirit of the animals and plants. So in the modern world today, we need to have a lot of compassion for one another, because it's very noisy. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of pollution. There's a pollution of the mind. There's pollution of the waters. There's a pollution in the ether. And that makes it very difficult for people to hear and feel their spirit and their dreams. So we need to have compassion for one another, and then be very patient. Patient. Know that this path of connecting to your indigenous spirit is open to you, is open to everyone. All you have to do is make that decision. So this retreat is a very unusual retreat. It's a pilgrimage to Africa. It's a pilgrimage to the Garden of Eden. It's a vision quest. It's something to help reboot you and help you to connect to that timeless space inside you, which indigenous people call the dream time. I have experienced this, so I'm teaching you from my experience, and I'm going to be guiding you from my experience of over 20 years as a traditional sangoma. Alwyn will be guiding you with over 20 years as a traditionally trained tracker, and the two of us are going to be helping you to connect to the land in a compassionate and gentle way, no force. So the focus is going to be small groups, because that's all we can do when we're walking in the bushveld, is have small groups. So there'll be 7 days in the Kalahari with an optional extra extension of 3 days in the Okavanga Delta. Now, most people do go for that optional extension of 3 days, but like I say, it is an option. I do recommend it because it's a very nice way for people to integrate their experience in the Kalahari. Now, the Okavanga Delta, for those of you who are not aware, is one of the 7 natural wonders of Africa. The Okavanga Delta is absolutely incredible, and it's one of the wildest places and most unpolluted places left on planet Earth today, and definitely in Africa. So just to walk that space and to hear the birds and watch the animals and track the lion and hear their call at night, hear the call of the lion. It helps to unravel and unblock certain spaces inside of you as a human being. And that's my intention, that's my wish for you, and that's why that's why Alwyn and I have created these retreats, to unblock spaces inside of each of us so that we can connect with our humanity. Because the default of a human being is not a hungry ghost, is not a hoarder, is not a massive consumer. The default of a human being is someone who's very compassionate, very empathic, and a creature that is a custodian of this planet, as someone who is looking to help and foster the welfare of the animals and plants around us. So this is why we are doing these retreats, to educate people so that they can dream in a clear way, so that they can connect to the animals and the plants around them, and also so they can go back home wherever they're from with a good feeling about Africa, so that there's hope for us in future in Africa. Okay, so I'm giving you a bit of a preamble here, and I'm just going to pause for a moment because Chris is a wonderful interviewer, and I'm sure he has other things to share. So over to you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, John. So I can remember on this trip, certain doors being open for me, like the capability of being able to see with the eyes of the leopard, and to have a kind of shared transmission that takes place from the tracks, and the doors that opened up to my dreams from this trip, and also the direct experience of animal communication through the exercises that you and Alwyn took us through. And so just to give a sense of some of the things that happened for me personally, I can say that in addition to what I just shared, there's so much that happens after the retreat. This is something that really works on me, I can say, for my own experience, and that continues to work within me, especially within the dream time and my connection with nature. And so I wanted to mention those things, as there's the retreat itself, and then there's everything that comes after it as well. And so John, this must be part of the intention of the design, I take it, in what you're doing here with the opening of these portals, that it's not just about the time together in the desert, although that is profound and significant. There's also this ongoing developmental process that gets kicked off by putting ourselves there in the desert.
Yes, I mean, this is a lifelong journey. I mean, my intention was for many years to go to Botswana. So this is a lifelong quest for me, and I'll say the same thing for other people. Once your connection to the natural world has been sparked, once you've been connected to the African bush and you start to have dreams, that's something that you'll always have. So that's my intention, is that once people have experienced 7 days or 10 days in Botswana, in the Kalahari, then that space is something that's going to be soul food for you. Soul food. So it's a space that you can tap into at any time of your life. So that's why this is a bucket list. This is something that you might only do once in your life, or you might be privileged to do a few times. But the way we've created is that the hope is that it's going to be so profound that it's something that you're going to be able to tap into at any time, to give you sustenance, to give you food. So to reconnect with the Garden of Eden, a living wilderness sanctuary that has been untapped and unsullied for thousands of years. Breathe it in, manifest that experience in a real-time way, live it, breathe it, and then hopefully, please God, it's going to help shift and nourish you in the years to come.
Yeah, thank you, John. And maybe give us an idea of what a day might look like.
So for the Kalahari side of the retreat, which is 7 days, we normally wake up at around 5:30, and then we have breakfast. We have, well, just a small breakfast, like some coffee and biscuits and things like that. And then we go and do a nature walk, which lasts for 2 hours. So we walk with a tracker, with a Bushman tracker, and with Alwyn, and they follow the tracks in the sand. And we just go walking into the bushveld, listening to the sounds of the birds, and tracking whatever animals come across our way. So some days we tracked cheetah, and another day we tracked rhino. Actually, we were very lucky to track rhino, and then we saw rhino. But we just listen to the sounds around us and see what happened the night before, and then the Bushman tracker would give us some sense of what's happening in the bushveld by the tracks in the sand, and then we would go following those tracks. And then we'd come back and we have breakfast, and then after breakfast we'll do about 2 hours in the shrine tent. So I create a shrine in the bushveld, and that is where we go to pray. That is where we go to connect to our ancestors and our spirit. And that is where I teach people about the subtle art of tracking, which is inner tracking, which is connecting to your dreams, your ancestors, your own spirit. And from there, that lasts, like I say, for about 2 hours, and then we have lunch, and then we have a siesta in the afternoon because it's hot, it's Botswana, it's the Kalahari. So we encourage people to rest and to sleep if they can in the afternoon. And then late afternoon, we might do another bush walk where we go into the bushveld and we follow the tracks in the sand. And then we have, in the evening, early evening, around 6, we have drinks near the watering hole where we watch the animals, and we have some drinks, and then we have supper. And the supper is game meat from the land. So it might be kudu, it might be eland, whatever we can gather from the land is what we eat. And the food is incredible. It's very healthy, it's very organic, and we could probably get Chris to speak a bit more about that in terms of his experience, because I really like to hear his experience of the Kalahari. So over to you, Chris.
And hi, we just have a gnarly storm that just came in here. It's raining in Arizona, which is always a welcome thing. It's just I have a little dissonance when it also is when I'm relying on internet to be heard and seen. So I'm sorry I was cut off just a little bit there. I think that one thing that I can say, that there's the proof in the pudding, in the sense that I went to the retreat and here I am with you all, desiring for this medicine to be shared with more people. I think it's such a gift that we have this opportunity to even get the chance to go and to be with Alwyn, yourself, John, and of course with the Bushman. And it's really something that has worked on me over the years. It's like trying to explain what chocolate is like to someone who's never tasted chocolate. I have a really hard time putting things into words, and I'm quite the talker. So the fact that it's hard for me to put so much of this into words really speaks to it being a kind of spiritual experience that is, as they say, ineffable, or like things you can't put into words. Just like seeing the stars at night there by the fire is an image and a memory that I go back to all the time, and that's shifted my own personal relationship with the land and with the stars. So yeah, I really got to admit to the fact that it's hard for me to talk about, other than to say that it was an incredibly rich experience. My relationship to myself and nature has changed. My relationship to dreams has just radically shifted in a positive way. And then the insights, the understanding, and the challenges that come from working with my dreams that occurred from being in the desert there is it's like I've got a lifelong of development courses that happen just from waking up in the morning and thinking about what my dreams were. That was never the case before coming to the desert. the idea that we can communicate with animals and that we can have this open channel, it wouldn't have been something that someone could have explained it to me and I'd say, it's kind of woo woo, hippy dippy, I don't know. But to directly experience it and then to have that be validated by everyone else getting similar messages from the animals that we're speaking with as we come together. So much of the work is doing the exercises and the processes and coming back and sharing. And it's in the coming back and sharing that there's some extra magic that occurs because we start to see the common threads throughout. And that's something that no one could really convince me of. It had to be a direct experience.
Yeah, that's right. And there's one thing I just need to share with people, and that is whenever you're doing pilgrimage, whenever you sign up for something, and especially this retreat, then you have to be aware of your inner weather in terms of discomfort and anxiety and fear and everything that comes up. And that's all part of any kind of initiation. It's part of any kind of indigenous work, because when we are working with wild animals, we are working with animals that have befriended the weather, they have befriended the external weather. But when we are bringing people from the modern world who are living in weather-controlled environments, that is the first thing I feel that people are faced, is with having to deal with the heat in Botswana and also the inner heat, the inner weather. So it's a good learning experience when you are working with wild animals. They befriend the weather outside. They never say it's too hot or too cold or whatever. They either rest or they let go. They don't complain about it, they deal with it. It's a good lesson for us as human beings, in particular modern people, that when we have issues, when we have emotions, when we have shadow energies, we need to befriend that and not be triggered by it. So this retreat is very powerful, and more than likely it's going to trigger you. It's going to trigger you emotionally. It's going to bring things up for you. And it's supposed to, because every retreat is about cleansing, it's about purification, it's about helping you come back to a place of innocence. So all I'm saying is that be aware of that, and don't worry about that, because that's all part of nature, it's all part of pilgrimage, it's all part of alchemy, and you can see it as a pattern of inner weather. So facing your inner weather, when you sign up for a powerful and beautiful retreat like this, and you're feeling a little bit afraid, a bit anxious, wonderful, wonderful, because you have to make a decision to connect with your human spirit. We say, amongst the sangomas in South Africa, we say, people are born as human beings, but they have to make a decision to become a human being. And that decision means, are you ready to connect to your human spirit? Are you ready to connect to your humanity? And if you say yes, then the next thing is, are you ready to feel uncomfortable? Are you ready to feel your emotional body and smile? Are you ready to feel the wind inside of you, and the rain, the thunder, and smile and know that it's all part of Mother Nature? And once you befriend that, then the road gets much more magical. Over to you, Chris.
So we got some questions here in the chat. So I'll invite Nancy, if you'd like to say your question out for the group, but you had a question here. So if you'd like to say that.
Okay. Hi, John. Oh, it just sounds utterly fantastic. I mean, I love the unusual nature, because I've wanted to go to Africa, but I have a friend who's a photographer, and she goes and does these fantastic photos, but I just don't want to do that. I'd rather have one of her photos.
Yeah.
So anyway, what I was wondering is the part with you, is it all on foot? And this other question I had was, will there be choices for vegetarians for the evening meal?
Okay, so there's a good question. So With the first part of the work, it's going to be on foot, and that's with Alwyn. My work is going to be in the shrine tent. Okay. Now, it's not just going to be in the tent in terms of my work. I'm also going to be encouraging people to go and find a sitting spot. So go and find a place close to the shrine tent where they can pray. So my job is to teach you how to pray and to connect to those inner tracking spaces inside of you. So that's the first question you're asking. And now the second question in terms of options for vegetarians. Yes, there are some options, but please be aware that we are not living in an urban environment. We're living in a very, very rural area where special dietary requirements are very difficult to satisfy, you know. So you have to be aware of that and patient about that. So the vegetarian options are quite limited, to be honest with you. And but we do our best to cater to people who are vegetarians. Does that help you?
Yes. And so the second part, the safari part, that will be in a Jeep, or, I mean, I would assume you'd have to go drive out into the bush to be able to see the animals, right?
Well, the first part of the day, in the Kalahari, we're going to be walking on foot, so no Jeep, walking on foot, okay, for about 2 hours, tracking the animals. And then in the afternoon, more than likely, we're going to go on foot as well. There's going to be only a little bit of driving in the Jeep in terms of the tracking and the dreams and tracking. The retreat in the Kalahari, there's going to be very limited time in the Jeep. But in terms of the Okavanga Delta, Okavanga Delta is the optional 3-day extension. Then that's going to all be in the Jeep, because we can't walk around on foot there. So that's all going to be on in the Jeep. But we're going to have a campsite in the Okavanga Delta, campsite that's going to be made by Alwyn and his Matsebi Safari team. So each person will get a tent. It's going to be a bit like glamping, so it's a very luxurious camping, but it's a tent and campsite in the middle of the wilderness, and we will be able to walk a little bit around there from your tent to the communal sitting area and around the campsite and things like that. But in terms of going to see the animals, sometimes we do see the animals when we're sitting around the fire, and we can definitely hear the lions calling at night because they come quite close. But it is safe, and you're just going to make sure that you close you zip your tent up, you know.
So they might come into the campsite where the tents are?
The lion? Are you talking about the lion?
Yeah, or any animals.
Yes, it's the wilderness. Yes, but it's very safe, and and we do give very clear guidelines and protocols on how to handle that, and that's part of the beauty in going to the Garden of Eden.
And so sorry, Nancy, do you have another follow-up question to that?
No, not right at this moment, but I do have some questions. Let somebody else go. I have another one I'm thinking about.
Well, we got one from Anne with just a question of how many miles are we walking every day? Anne says, I'm a senior, but I can still walk.
Okay, it's a good question, Anne. So we probably, I mean, I haven't measured it, but it's roughly, I think, around 4 or 5 kilometers. It's not too far because we walk quite slowly. So it's more stamina that you need, stamina in terms of dealing with the heat, but we do walk in the morning time, so it's not too hot, but it can get up to 30 degrees or 30 degrees Celsius in the morning. And so you just need to have a bit of stamina, but like I say, we probably walk about 5 kilometers or maybe even less, but at a good steady pace. What would you say, Chris? What is your experience of the walking?
I think that's about right. And it's paced out well where there's walking throughout. So it's not like it's all one long trek for the day. And I think that makes a big difference too.
That's right. And we had someone who was 80 or just over 80 years old who came on the retreat this year, and her husband who was late 70s, and they were both fine. They did fine. There was no problem,
We have Michaela with a question here. So if you'd like to say your question out loud, please do. And if you're silent for a little bit more time, then I'll read it for you.
No, hi everybody.
Hi.
Just basic kind of stuff, malaria thing, I know about the medicine that you can take the same medicine beforehand, or if it happens, and I rather not take anything before because this might not be the case, and I do not want to poison my body if it's not really needed. So I do not know how this is. I mean, I've been to Africa before, and usually what I did, I took the pills with me. I luckily never had the need to ingest any, but I do not know about this trip, for example. And the second was about do we have some information about the dress code? I mean, what we have, what we need in the desert to walk and dress and things like that. That's all.
Okay, so the first thing is that it's not a malaria area. Okay, so you don't have to be too worried about malaria. However, we have a booking agent in Botswana, and that's Bev. Bev does all the bookings, and she can alert you in terms of any incidences of malaria, and she will go through those kind of protocols with you. But in my experience, none of us took anti-malaria medication. So that's the first thing. However, to be doubly certain in terms of insurance and all of that kind of thing, the best would be to talk to Bev when you're booking. And in terms of dress code, it's a good question. I don't think we've really covered dress code, but I think it's a good idea to wear light, comfortable cotton clothes, preferably neutral colors like khaki colors, not kind of loud kind of colors like lots of colors, but more like subdued and natural colors like khakis and darker colors. Yeah. Okay, but the dress code and all that kind of stuff we can share once you have signed up for the retreat. Okay, we'll go through all of that. So with all of you, just to let you know, we only have a very limited number of places per retreat. So there's only 8 people per retreat, and we have 3 retreats available at the moment with 8 places, but it fills up quite quickly. And so once someone expresses an interest and they email Bev, then Bev is going to send you an application form where you have to write out your background and whether you can walk for 5 kilometers and what your general state of health is and that kind of thing. And then I review those applications, and most people are accepted. And then after that, you are required to send a deposit, and which is non-refundable. And then you're going to be eligible for 2 webinars with me. The first is going to be an orientation webinar to prepare you for the retreat. And then the second webinar is an integration webinar after the retreat to prepare you for entering the world and dealing with or working with this medicine that you have been taught. So over to you, Chris, is there anything else?
Yes, I just wanted to direct you all to the link I put in the chat here. It's John's website, johnlockley.com/events. And so to register, you can read the information there, and then there's an info plus booking button. That's what you want to press to take the next step. So highly recommend you join us for this. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, maybe more if you catch the bug and want to go again. But seriously, we're so happy that you joined and are hearing a call and that you're following your interest to be here with us now. Because spaces are limited, they will book up, and there's a cutoff date for application. So I'd recommend if you're resonating with what you're hearing here, that you would go to the site, johnlockley.com/events, and click that info plus booking button to take the next step, and maybe we'll see you in the desert.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Yes, so on that note, I can say to you that we like to have all the participants who want to come on the retreat, we like to know by October. So if you are thinking about it, then please fill out that application form and contact Bev, just so we have a sense of the numbers, because there's a lot of planning in terms of the lodges in Botswana and in the Kalahari. There's a lot of organizing that goes into these retreats. And if there's any other questions that you have, please feel free to email me. So over to you, Chris. Should we wrap it up?
Let's wrap it up. Yeah, thank you all so much for coming. This was really nice to hear the drumming and chanting and to tell and share some stories from what it was like in the desert. So yeah, we hope you join us, and we thank you all so much for coming today. Happy new moon. And we have only a few minutes left before the transition. So I think this is the perfect time to wrap up. Thank you all, and many blessings to you.
Thanks, Chris. And I'll finish off with a little bit of chanting and just a little bit of drumming. So
nice, thank you.
So the drumming is a good way to transport you to the ancient space of Africa and the Kalahari, and to feel the rhythm of the land, and to feel whether the spirits of Africa are calling you. I'm sure they are, because it's the birthplace of all of us. It's the birthplace of mankind. So feel that call, feel the call of the drum. Here we go. Breathe in the African drum. Breathe in the rhythm. Breathe in the Garden of Eden and the return to innocence. Breathe in the animal world that is suffering terribly right now and that needs human beings to wake up and to follow their destiny as custodians of this planet. We all need to wake up and look after the animals, because too many are going extinct right now, and we need to wake up and do something about that. So here we go. Hey, amanyange. Volenle amanyange, volenle amanyange. Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Hey, yeah, yeah. Amagwinya abantu badala camagu siyabulela bana badala camagu vulela manyangi camagu vulela nkulunkulu camagu vulela tiqo camagu vulela qamali camagu siyangqole siyathandaza camagu nkosi kakhulu camagu. So I'm speaking in the Xhosa language, and I'm honoring the great ones and all our ancestors, and I'm saying Uvulunlela, please open the road. Help us to reclaim and reconnect to our humanity, to our human spirit. So thanks all of you for listening, and I look forward to seeing some of you in the Kalahari at our Dreams and Tracking retreat. Thank you for listening. Thank you.